That television belongs to my children. Put it back.
Your children, your girls. That is the whole problem, Helen. Girls cannot inherit what a man built.
Victor built this with me. I was here. I worked. I suffered with him.
Victor is gone. And everything Victor owned belongs to his blood. His real blood, not daughters. Not daughters.
He is not even buried yet. He's not even in the ground yet, and you are doing this.
Go and grieve somewhere else. This compound is no longer yours.
Mommy, where are they taking our things? Mommy, why are they taking our things?
Shh, it's okay, my love.
The day they buried Victor, the ground was still soft. Helen had not slept in 4 days. She had bathed her husband's body with her own hands, chosen the clothes he would wear into the earth, and stood at the graveside with her 3 daughters pressed against her and watched the soil swallow the only man who had ever truly seen her. She had not cried at the graveside, not because she was not broken, but because her daughters were watching and she had promised herself they would not see their mother fall apart in public. She would grieve in private. She would cry when the house was quiet and the girls were asleep. But the house was never quiet again after that day. Chukwuemeka arrived the morning after the burial. He did not knock. He walked through the front gate of the compound in Enugu that Helen and Victor had built together over 11 years, and he sat in the parlor like a man who already owned it. He had driven in from Onitsha with 2 of his younger brothers, Ifeanyi and Obina, and a cousin none of them had seen in years. They sat together and they spoke in low voices, and they did not invite Helen to join them. When Helen walked into her own parlor and asked what was happening, Chukwuemeka looked at her the way a landlord looks at a tenant who has overstayed their welcome. He told her the family had met. He told her that according to their tradition, a man who leaves no son behind leaves his property to his brothers. He told her that her 3 daughters, Ada, Chisom, and little Amara, were beautiful children, God bless them, but they were girls, and girls would marry and carry another man's name, and therefore they could not be considered heirs to Victor's estate. Helen stood very still. She asked him to repeat what he had just said. He repeated it without blinking. That night, the van came. They took the 2 televisions. They took the refrigerator. They took the generator that Victor had bought with his transport business profits in 2019. They took the desktop computer from the small home office where Victor used to sit and do his accounts late at night. They took 3 of the 4 ceiling fans. They took the dining table and 6 chairs. Ifeanyi personally disconnected the satellite dish from the roof and carried it down under his arm like it was his own. Helen stood in the compound and watched. Her neighbors watched from behind their fences. Nobody came out. Nobody said a word. Because this was tradition, they told themselves. Because this was how it had always been done. When Chukwuemeka's men came for the children's school bags, the small pink bag that belonged to Amara, who was only 6 years old, Helen stepped in front of the door. She said, "Take everything else. Leave my children's school things." Chukwuemeka said she was being dramatic. He said they were not taking the bags. They were only checking the room. They took the bags. At the end of that night, Helen sat on the floor of an almost empty house with her 3 daughters asleep around her. No mattress. The mattresses had gone too. She sat on the bare terrazzo floor in the dark because they had taken the generator and NEPA had taken the light. And she held her daughters in the darkness, and she finally allowed herself to cry. She cried until there was nothing left inside her. And then she stopped. And she remembered Victor. 6 months before he died, Victor had been sick, not the kind of sick that shows, the quiet kind, the kind that lives in your chest and moves slowly and lets you pretend for a while that everything is fine. Victor had known something was wrong before the doctors confirmed it, and in that season of quiet fear, he had done something he never told anyone except Helen. He had pressed a USB drive into her hand one evening while the girls were asleep. He had said, "If anything ever happens to me, Take this to Ba Okonkwa on Ogui Road. Nobody else, only him. Promise me. She had promised him. She had not known what was on the drive. She had not asked. She had simply taken it and placed it at the bottom of her handbag, beneath her purse and her headache tablets, and the small photograph of their wedding day she had carried for 11 years. And she had left it there because she believed with her whole heart that she would never need it. She needed it now. 3 days after the van came, Helen dressed her daughters in their church clothes. The only decent clothes the brothers had left behind, because they had been hanging in the wardrobe behind Helen's own dresses, and Chukwuemeka's men had not searched carefully enough. She braided Ada's hair. She tied Chisom's ribbon. She carried Amara on her back. And she walked to Ogui Road. Ba Okonkwo was a quiet man in his 60s with a small office and a large reputation. He had been Victor's lawyer for 9 years. When Helen sat across from him and placed the USB drive on his desk, he looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at her. He said, "He told me you would come." The USB drive contained a recording. Victor, sitting in this same office, speaking clearly and calmly into a camera, his lawyer beside him. In the recording, Victor stated that he was of sound mind. He stated that he had watched his brothers his entire life and he knew their character. He stated that he was leaving his full estate, the compound in Enugu, the 3 transport buses registered under his business name, the shop on Market Road, and 2 plots of land in Oka, entirely and irrevocably to his wife Helen and their daughters Ada, Chisom, and Amara. He had registered everything. The title deeds had already been transferred, the will had been filed with the probate registry, every document had been signed, witnessed, and sealed before Victor took his last breath. The brothers had taken furniture. Victor had already given Helen everything that actually mattered. But Helen did not go back to the compound quietly. Ba Okonkwo filed the papers within the week, and because Chukwuemeka had illegally removed property from a registered estate and threatened and intimidated a legally recognized widow, the matter did not stay in a lawyer's office. It went to court, and because one of Helen's neighbors, the woman behind the fence who had watched in silence that night, had recorded everything on her phone, the evidence was clean and complete. The case broke in 3 weeks. It did not stay in the courtroom. A journalist who covered property rights and widow harassment in the Southeast picked up the story. She had been looking for exactly this kind of case for months. She published it online on a Wednesday morning with the neighbor's video attached, Chukwuemeka and his brothers loading the van, the children's school bags being carried out, Helen standing at the doorway in her morning wrapper, holding little Amara. By Thursday, it had been shared 40,000 times. By Friday, it was on 2 television stations.
Chukwuemeka was a local government official in Onitsha. His name was in the story. His office was named. His photograph was in the article standing in Victor's compound, supervising the looting of a widow's home. His phone did not stop ringing from Friday morning. By Saturday, his commissioner had called him in. By the following week, he had been suspended pending investigation. Ifeanyi lost his shop lease. His landlord, a woman who had read the story on her daughter's phone, refused to renew his agreement. Obina's wife left the house and took her children to her mother's compound. She did not return for 2 months, and when she came back with conditions. The cousin who had driven the van and said nothing was named in the article too. He drove a commercial bus for a living. His passengers recognized him for weeks. He stopped driving for 3 months because he could not bear it. The court returned everything, not just the property. The physical items, what could be traced, were ordered returned. What could not be traced was valued and paid in damages from Chukwuemeka's personal account. Helen stood in her compound on the day the court order was executed and watched the sheriff's officers carry out their work. Her daughter stood beside her. Ada, who was 12 and understood everything, Chisom, who was 9 and was learning, Amara, who was 6 and held her mother's hand and looked up at her with large, quiet eyes. Helen did not celebrate loudly. She did not ululate or call her friends to come and watch. She stood in the compound her husband had loved, and she breathed the air of it, and she felt Victor beside her, the way she always felt him. Not in any dramatic way, just quietly, just there. She had kept her promise to him. He had kept his promise to her. Chukwuemeka came to the compound once after everything ended. He came alone, no brothers, no cousin. He came in a plain shirt, not his agbada, and he stood at the gate and he asked to speak to Helen. Helen came to the gate. She did not open it. He said he was sorry. He said tradition had blinded him. He said he had not known Victor had made arrangements. He said a lot of things, standing there at that gate in a plain shirt with nothing behind him. Helen listened to every word. Then she said, Victor knew your character before you showed it. That is why he planned. Take care of yourself, Chukwuemeka. She closed the gate. She walked back to her daughters, and she did not look back. Was it light for Helen's brothers-in-law to invoke tradition against a widow and her daughters? Or does love and law have to stand stronger than custom? Drop your answer in the comment section. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs it today. And drop a comment. We want to hear from you. God bless you.